Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson, and I appreciate you making us a part of your day. It's no surprise that U.S. dairy producers have seen several years of challenges, stretching back to the early 2010s. In that time, there have been growing amounts of consolidation in the dairy industry, and a number of smaller producers have made that tough decision to hang up the milkers and sell the cows. When these smaller farms close, and increasingly we're seeing this across the northern parts of the country, the core of the dairy belt in the upper plains and in the northeast, when they hang up their milkers, it has impacts beyond the farm gates. Al Gustin, our friend in North Dakota, dug into this issue and took the time to have conversations with several dairy farmers up in his neck of the woods. What he found was that the trend towards closure might not be over yet, and he filed this report.
The milking parlor sits empty on this farm where cows had been milked since 1906. Albert Noyle was the fourth generation to milk.
So you obviously like milking cows.
Oh, I love it. I always did.
But
the prices of everything just increased way high, but the milk just kept going down.
Noyle sold the cows in March.
So, you miss them, cows?
Dearly. Always miss them. But you just got to get over it. Life goes on.
The loss of one more family dairy operation isn't news. What makes this one noteworthy is that this is Emmons County, the county that historically, proudly, had more dairy farms than any other county in the state of North Dakota. There were 200 here 40 years ago. Now that the Noyles have quit, there's only one left.
You'll still find Tony Goldaddy, his wife Janine, and their children in the milking parlor, mornings and evenings, although it's not always the whole family. Goldaddy started dairying right out of high school, took over an operation from his uncle who was killed in a farm accident. Later, when he milked with his father 20 years ago, they were up to 120 cows, and things were good then.
There were months in back then that we would make 5 to 6 times about what we're making on a cow right now.
In recent years, he hasn't kept back heifers, and so the herd has shrunk through attrition. It costs so much more to dairy now, feed, equipment, and as there are fewer dairy farms on the milk route, the deduction for hauling his milk keeps going up.
Like when we started, our trucking was 30-40 cents a hundredweight, and it's like $2 now.
Dairying was once the lifeblood of Linton, the county seat 20 miles away. Dairy farm families shopped here. Retired dairy farmers lived here. This was a dairy community. There was a culture of dairy that existed here. There are towns like this all over the country, towns that were dairy towns, but now so many of the family dairy farms are gone, replaced by mega dairies. Goldaddy, who's 47, watched as his neighbors quit.
They kept dwindling. I kept thinking, I'm the youngest one, so I should be able to be the last one.
He is, and while nothing is certain,
it's a 90% chance I won't be milking another winter.
Odds are beef cows will take the place of these milk cows, although Goldaddy says there may be a couple the kids won't let him sell. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Al Gustin.
Thank you, Al, for that story from North Dakota, and we wish all the dairy families best of luck in continuing those traditions on their farms. Now, it's worth noting that the big story today driving headlines in the dairy sector isn't the loss of small farms, it's the increasing presence of HPAI, highly pathogenic avian influenza, in America's dairy herd. This has been an ongoing issue for about 6 weeks, and later on in this program, we'll be joined by Farm Progress Policy Editor Josh Bateby, who's going to dive into some of the recent regulatory changes that are coming for dairy producers. Folks, things haven't been easy in recent years, and it looks like there could be tougher times ahead for America's dairy industry. Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IFVF tires with 82 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. Now it's time to talk markets. Joining me this week is Chris Robinson of Robinson Ag Marketing. And Chris, thanks for taking the time to join us.
Hey, great to be here.
Let's talk first about this wheat market. It has been a week-long rally in wheat. Chris, what's changed in that market?
Two things. You have a little bit of dryness with here in America. You've got some concerns about dryness in Europe. And I think the last thing is also, too, the market's been so oversold for so long. It's been really a debacle. I don't care if you go back 6 months or 2 years. Every rally we've had since Mr. Putin invaded Ukraine has failed. And then, for all the reasons where you'd think, well, gee, you'd want to be long wheat. So I think that's the last thing, too. We always follow managed money. Managed money have a large short bet in all three wheats, KC, Chicago, and spring wheat. They had a record short wheat in Minneapolis. They kind of backed off a little bit, but they're still short about 25,000 contracts. The record short was about 30. So when those guys are wrong, when they start buying it in a thin market, you get these moves. And, we've 75, 80 cents off the bottom. We're up to, 2, 3, maybe a 3-month high. So the market's giving you a gift. Right here.
And is this a gift to be sold, Chris, or could there be more coming? Is the narrative changing?
There could be more coming. I mean, this has been a year where I've done a lot of meetings with people like, is this 2012? We didn't bottom out until the end of May in 2012, and then we took off. I would say this is probably the perfect storm if you want to capture part of the rally, but you want to leave the upside open. This is the perfect market for a put. I know guys don't like puts. I would also say this, if 80 cents ago you were chewing your fingernails off, 80 cents is enough to maybe make some sales, and you can always re-own it. So I think that this rally needs to be rewarded. Now you can reward it and still keep your upside open. If this is 2012 and we're going to go back to the moon, that's what I would say. But this is a gift.
All right. Corn market, Chris, is it 2012? I've heard that from a lot of folks across the country. They're gearing up, watching markets this summer. How are you encouraging farmers to think about this next year's production and sales?
Well, it's been hard, right? Our best marketing opportunities so far were, in October. Nobody wants to do anything, or you're just harvesting one crop and you're looking at next year. I think that is going to be, in the January, we started January with, we gapped lower in beans, and we had basically a pretty nasty sell-off in corn and beans. If you're looking at spot corn, I think that's also SOS, sell on strength. And again, if it's 2012, you can still get very cheap calls. I was pricing calls this morning for guys. I would say this, we had a nice 3-day, 4-day bounce after last week's. We were at a 6-week low. It was looking kind of dismal, like we might go back down and test 410, which was the low in May corn. But I would say this, if you need to sell it, I always tell guys it's much nicer to sell into a 40-cent rally. Don't be afraid to do something. You can always re-own it. And again, what are we waiting for next? We don't have another USDA till the 10th. If you go back to 2012, we trended lower until the last week of May, and then it was game on. So I would say this, defense. This is not the time where I want to be selling calls to pay for puts, because that could really backfire. It looks like it's a free hedge. It's free until we get a weather issue.
Yep. If that 2012 threat were to come true, you would notice those calls pretty quick.
Right.
Plenty to talk about here in the corn market, beans, and livestock, Chris, when we come back. Folks, stay with us. We'll have more in just a moment. Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IFVF tires with 82 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. We're talking markets this week with Chris Robinson of Robinson Ag Marketing. And Chris, before we went to break, you mentioned that we do not have many USDA reports for about 2 weeks here. In the markets, I'm seeing a lot of reactivity around the 50, 100-day moving average. What's going on there?
Well, if there's no demand story, which there isn't, and there's no real weather story, it's starting to get a little bit of dryness in South America for the second crop, then barring those stories, we become very, very reactive to technical levels. And the 50-day moving average, 100-day moving average, it's a big pivot for a lot of trading programs. So that's why it has such influence, and we may just trade around that level like we've seen. It's been very, very frustrating. When you get above it, you get bullish. When you get below it, people get bearish. I would just say, you've got to be patient, But yeah, that's been a huge level. It can give you some opportunities though. So I would definitely keep an eye on that 50-day and 100-day moving average.
All right. Chris, let's talk the soybean market. That crop is going in the ground. We're seeing it come out of Brazil. How are these two factors balancing? What are you watching here in the coming months?
Well, we've had quite a lot of supply coming up out of South America. They didn't have a supply issue at all. China's pretty much been in the catbird seat for where and when they want to buy soybeans. In the past, they would have been, I think, more aggressive buying at these 8-month, 9-month lows, which we're at. I think that moving forward, it's going to be, again, a weather issue that's going to move us out of this trading range. We've been in a $1 trading range. I always caution people when we've basically been going from $13 to around $11.50. That's big. I would say if we do get a rally back up to $13, it needs to be rewarded. In the meantime, what do? Well, we know what the worst case scenario is for new crop beans. It's that $11.50, $11.30 level. And so I think that's kind of the stance that I would take. Protect against that disappearing and look for opportunities to make better sales when we get towards $13.
Once we get some story that starts to move these markets. Chris, let's talk about the cattle markets. We've seen incredible strength in that market. 185 June live cattle back in March. We're $10 off those highs now. How are you watching this market as we head into grilling season?
Well, we came off of a pretty friendly cattle on feed. We gapped open higher to start the week. And then before you know it, I think the risk is the what if, the headlines, what's going on with bird flu, and how is it going to impact the market. The market's been very, very sensitive to that. Long term, it's a friendly story. Long term, cash has held up very well. Cash has been leading futures. And again, the same situation. We've been in a kind of a trading range where we've seen these big reversals, and then we turn around 2 days later and it's gone. So I would expect to see more volatility. And I would expect the one thing that I'd be worried about if I'm a producer, I want to protect against those December lows. You want to keep the upside open. With the stock market at all-time highs, anytime we have any sort of correction, the biggest correction we've had so far was about 7%. Mm-hmm. If that was to get bigger in the S&P, that could put some pressure on cattle. I know that's odd, but that's something I'd be watching if I was long cattle.
Switching gears, Chris, let's talk about the hog market. This has been quite the rally for the past few weeks. Does it still have room to run?
Yeah, we've come off the contract lows there in December. It's been an excellent 4 months. Fundamentally, there's a good demand story. There's not enough animals out there, and they may benefit if any issues come up with cattle. So I would say this is a great opportunity. Don't let it get away.
All right, lots to watch as we head into summer in these commodity markets. Thanks for joining us, Chris Robinson of Robinson Ag Marketing.
Thank you.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Yes, indeed. It's time to take a look at the weather ahead. Greg Solier joins us now. And Greg, it sounds like it might get more active in the Pacific Northwest next week.
Yeah, I need a little more moisture out there. Still on the cusp of some dryness and some drought-ridden conditions. Remember, the winter season was not all that conducive to getting significant snow in the Cascades and rain in the valley locales. So here's an opportunity to lead to some field work, but it's some moisture. And as well, expected to make its way eastward into some of the worst and worsening drought areas of Montana and the Dakotas. And here is one weather system making its move. Fairly benign and weak. The flow is fast west to east into the Pacific Northwest. A little cool air behind it. The cold air easing its grip into the northern Canadian prairie. We'll get a couple little rain snow showers across the northern and central sections of the Rockies and slightly colder air through Big Sky country. But this weather system here coming ashore promises to bring some rain into northern California, Pacific Northwest. Just the highest peaks through the Bitterroots will get some snow, but it is moving eastbound, and it is a deepening trough in the Pacific Northwest, so we do anticipate moisture with time, and you'll see that in the 4-week forecast into Montana and sections of the Dakotas where there will be a couple of scattered showers and thunderstorms. So some spring field work delays there, but we need the moisture across areas, the upper Missouri Valley, Canadian prairie, and points down to the east. Pretty quiet weather picture across the desert Southwest. Seasonal weather temperatures in the valley locales, high pressure across the Four Corners area, and dry time into much of the central and southern winter wheat belt. Jekyll and Hyde setup. We're in great shape here soil moisture wise. Western Kansas, worsening conditions as you get off to the east. As the week wears on, a little buckling of the jet stream pattern. There's a system coming ashore that may generate a couple of rain showers for the Sacramento Valley, maybe a raindrop all the way down to San Diego and the Imperial Valley. There's some heat building, by the way. Here we go into the central and southern plains. It may spark a thunderstorm into the Black Hills and into sections of Nebraska, but a pattern shift as you get to the Missouri on eastward here as we move forward here in the next couple of weeks.
Well, let's talk about what's coming in the central part of the U.S. Greg, a lot of growers want to get out there. Will it be conducive weather for planting?
We think so in some areas. In particular, it will be the eastern corn belt where we've had some delays. We're kind of getting a juxtapositioning of the steering currents with time back to dry time and warmth here and welcome moisture in the western corn belt. This is a weakening weather system as it makes its way into the eastern complex after generating some pretty healthy rainfall over the past couple of days, northern and western corn belt locales, and again, some delays eastern sections, but that will change. Mild high pressure, warmth across the western corn belt for now. Better soil conditions expected to make its way through the corn belt and opportunities, we think, for it to get out there with heavier equipment. And here's a nice warm front moving temperatures into an almost early summer-like category from I-80 on southward. And here's that weather system that will, with time, bring showers and thunderstorms to the plains and western corn belt locales. More rough weather into parts of eastern Texas through Bayou country, the lower Mississippi Valley Delta region, gusty winds into West Texas, cotton for a time over the middle and late portions of the week. Here is the summertime ridge beginning to form on up, maybe into the low to mid 90s we go across Oklahoma, parts of Texas, a couple of thunderstorms into South Texas, warm, dry weather much needed into the Delta, lower Mississippi Valley, and even there too, opportunities for some late season field work in the deep southern states.
What do you see as you take a look to the eastern seaboard, Greg?
Again, the opportunity for field work after we get this weather system to move on through overtly wet Michigan, parts of Indiana and Ohio. And they're out there, by the way, inspecting some of those fruit trees into parts of central Michigan. We've had 2 or 3 rounds of mid and upper 20s there over the past week to 10 days. So inspection there. This weather system should move on through very quickly. Warm, high pressure over the eastern states for now. Dry time into the western corn belt. And then later in the week, big warm up slated, almost late May, early June-like temperatures we needed here, and more so into the eastern corn belt. There should be opportunities here for outdoor work and field work in the coming days. A couple of showers into the northeast and New England. A couple of showers eastern Florida. Here's the next weather system into the lower Mississippi Valley Delta region with a couple of showers and thunderstorms there. As the week wears on, high pressure over the southeastern states with building heat onto the southern plains. We'll have that 4-week forecast coming up in the second half hour.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Pentair Hi-Pro, a global leader in innovative spray technology for farmers for over 75 years.
Farmers across America continue to make good work getting these corn and soybean seeds in the ground. As of last Monday, USDA reported 12% of the corn crop was planted, 8% of soybeans have been planted. Farmers are taking advantage of this warmer weather. And those seeds that they are putting in the ground, of course, are backed by seed companies that have made big changes over the past several years. Recently, I had the chance to catch up with Tyler Vrugdenhill, a technical agronomist with Bayer, and we talked about some of the changes he's seeing with Channel Seed.
Some big changes coming for us in terms of the amount of agronomic support that you're going to see. We've added agronomists across the country to be able to enhance that agronomic experience locally for our seed pros and also our grower customers. So a lot of big changes coming for us, also dealing with the depth of portfolio that you're going to see for 2025 in a channel bag.
Let's talk about that depth of portfolio. Channel has quite a lineup of offerings, don't they, for today's farmer?
Yes, we're very excited to enhance on something that's already good and make it even better for the grower of 2025.
And that's kind of what that channel advantage is all about, isn't it?
Yeah, we really like to think of the channel advantage of being local agronomic expertise. Again, that being one of our brand pillars with the enhanced agronomic expertise coming with this new channel brand, but also relying on our local seed pros to really deliver that firsthand experience for their grower customers.
Let's talk a little bit about what those seed pros are seeing across the country. I've heard from growers, I'm sure you've heard the same, pest pressures in corn. Tyler, they continue to be present, they continue to rob yield. What's Channel bringing to the table?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. We love to talk about that. You know, in particular, if I think about even the Western Corn Belt, of course, the billion-dollar pest, corn rootworm, and being able to bring traits like SmartStack Pro and VT4 Pro and add those to our offering to be able to help growers manage the low to moderate acres that have historically had pressure, but also those moderate to high acres. We have something for both of those scenarios to be able to help control specifically corn rootworm pressure.
Thank you, Tyler, for that update. And folks, you're going to hear a lot, I think, about corn rootworm in the coming years. It's been a big pest in agriculture. It's known as the billion-dollar beetle for the damage it does to corn crop across the country. Now, back in 2003, BT corn was introduced, and BT corn was genetically modified to protect the plant against the worst harms of the corn rootworm beetle. Unfortunately now, 21 years later, that pest is beginning to evolve resistance. A recent study from the University of Arizona highlighted some of the traditional knowledge in agriculture and how it can apply to corn rootworm. Crop rotation. That was their answer to a lot of the troubles in Corn Belt states. If we rotate these crops, we can see consistent performance against that pest. And of course, it's not just protecting the seed once it's in the ground. It's important to get the seed in the ground properly. And that technology continues to improve as well. Doug Wiegand, the Director of Sales for North America at Precision Planting, filled me in recently on their new Cornerstone planting system.
Yeah, so the Cornerstone system, as we call it a system because, you know, a row unit really is not really that the row unit or all the attachments with that is really what is the system that puts seed in the ground. It's really not the bar, it's not the tractor, it's not the hitch. Everything that's happening that impacts the yield is on that system hooked to each row. So from the W plate that attaches to that bar, whatever bar that is or whatever model it is, it really doesn't matter. All the way to that final closing stitch of closing that seed is really the system that we're worried about.
So what are some advantages that the Cornerstone system brings to what's been previously attached to those planter bars?
Yeah, so with the Cornerstone system, our engineers for over a decade have been really comparing row units that are out there existing and different closing wheels and different meters and different downforce systems and all that. So the Cornerstone is really a decade or more worth of research and analysis across all the different planter systems that are out there, and it's designed into one. And so a lot of those flaws that we see in one, whether it be a performance flaw that affects agronomy or the agronomic response, or whether it be a wear, or maybe it's a depth adjustment. So with the Cornerstone system, we've designed an integrated system where all of our products just bolt right on. There's no adapter plates. In addition to that, there's better wear spots, there's better durability, and there's better performance. So for example, if you look at it, you're going to see that it's got trailing gauge wheel arms instead of gauge wheel arms that are pushed. And what we've learned is that by doing that, you actually lessen the row unit ride impact. It's actually a smoother ride by pulling those wheels versus pushing them, and it's better less downforce variability. Both of those variables impact yield. Another thing that we have is stuff like a row unit tilting hopper. So instead of that hopper having to lean forward and lifting it off, a guy can just adjust the latch, tip it back, whether that hopper is full or whether it's empty. It's not a lot of effort for the farmer at that point.
That is really slick. Doug, let's talk about what planter bars this can go on. Do you have a color preference, or is it pretty well ecumenical?
Yeah, it's pretty well across the board. We make it up to the W plate. That you bolt that W plate onto whatever bar or used planter or new planter, whatever it is that you have, and you've turned on to a new system at that point.
Thank you, Doug, for that update. It's incredible to me just how quickly ag technology continues to change. And folks, later on in the program, we'll take a look back at an antique piece of farm technology here on This Week in Agribusiness.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. It's no surprise that in 2024, farmers, thanks to inflation and rising input costs, they're handling more dollars than they ever have before in history, and that can create some challenges. Matt Roberts is an ag economist and farm business coach. He's been helping farms navigate these challenges. He joins us now. Dr. Roberts, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us.
Thanks for having me on, Mike, and give me the opportunity.
As you look out at the economic landscape in 2024, what are some of the big risks farms are encountering?
Well, as you pointed out, more dollars at play. Interest matters even more, particularly for a lot of farms in the Western and the Central Corn Belt last year had lower yields. There's less money. There's more money being carried on lines. That's really clear. And with these higher interest rates, a lot of farmers haven't ever really operated in what historically is a normal interest rate environment where we're thinking about operating lines at 8%, 9%. And I'm hearing just a lot of people continue to be shocked at how much they're paying in interest. So that's definitely one thing. Where's the lesson here? Look, this is the time to learn. This is why capital matters. This is why not letting living expenses get out of hand in the good times. Not saying don't live well, but keep it in your means, build cash cushion so that you don't have to rely on it because those operating lines, because you know the worst times are going to come.
Absolutely. Matt, I do have a question about getting that crop sold. Given the changing prices out there, it seems like this is an opportunity to really know your cost of production.
Always is. That's the other thing. Over and over, know your records, have good record keeping. Why? Because without good records, you don't know what your cost of production is. You don't know how to make decisions. I was talking to a farmer yesterday who's trying to think through a big decision kind of in his personal life. Does he try to leave his off-farm job or not? I said, well, let's talk about your records. And we go into it, and really his records weren't there yet to really be able to dive into that. So I think we're going to start really working on that. Another farmer wanted to know how farms around him are paying the rental rates that they are. And he walked into a meeting and said, this piece of ground just went for this amount of rent. How do they do it? I said, I don't know. Can you? He said, I don't know. Why not? So now we're digging into his records and really going to try and clean it up so he can see his exact cost of production and understand what he can and can't pay. But yeah, marketing right now, $4.75. For a lot of growers, we're right around that break even. We see that because we go to...
Time to get some sales on, then, it sounds like, folks. Matt Roberts with the Kern Mantle Group, providing business coaching to farmers. Thanks so much for joining us this week.
Thanks, Mike.
Greg Solier is back now with his extended farm weather forecast for the nation.
Greg Solier is back with a look at what's to come from a weather perspective. And Greg, it sounds like we might see some rain this next week. Who's going to get what?
Yeah, back into showers and thunderstorms and kind of a pattern shift. We've been talking about it. The longer range has been a little bit delayed, but finally here, seeing a transition to a little more scattered nature. Eastern sections, better coverage, western areas. So we're kind of reversing things here. And there should be progress here with time in the eastern Corn Belt and additional drought relief in the coming week over the western section. Speaking of maybe some longer range outlooks here, put together a podcast with Sarah Muirhead over at feedstuffs365.com. That will take you, by the way, forecast-wise into the July time frame. So it's really perspective for the rest of spring and summer. So check out their website, and yours truly and Sarah will bring it to you there. Anyway, severe weather potential here into the upper Midwest. There's some late season snow, highest peaks of the Cascades and Rockies. Some good coverage, half-inch and growing in the Pacific Northwest, quarter to half-inch east, up to an inch back to the west. Good news again with dryness and drought. Some wet weather later in the week over the southeastern sections of the country. So, Mike, while there's rain in the forecast, it's a little more opportunistic with outdoor work and field work in the eastern sections. More drought relief in the west.
All right, Greg, let's look at that first full week in May. Do you see that warm-up happening here in the country?
It continues on here, and it's the northern extent of usually the summertime hot ridge that builds over the middle part of the country. I know we're into early to mid-May, but maybe some 90-degree weather. We've seen it over sections of the Central Plains even a few weeks ago, so maybe up to about the I-80 corridor. And if you're in good shape and it's in the ground, hopefully some good crop emergence anticipated, as well as those cicadas, too, in the parts of the Midwest. Warmth in the east over the southwestern part of the country. Note how the jet stream is arced well to the north. And we do have a little sliver and corridor of wet weather, and this is of benefit, maybe severe weather, central and southern plains, western Corn Belt, dry time, many eastern sections of the Corn Belt, southeastern sections of the country, Pacific Northwest, some welcome moisture there too as we approach the mid-stretch of May.
Do you see that warm bubble still in place as you get to the week of May 13th?
We certainly do. That warm ridge, that hot ridge, that sinking air. You sink in air mass. Folks in the engine shop and tool shed know that you compress the gas and you warm it up. Same with the atmosphere. And here we go over readings probably above 85, maybe close to 90 parts of the Corn Belt locales. Warmth into the plain states. A little buckle in the jet across the western reaches of the country. Serves up some late season moisture for the Pacific Northwest. Stormy weather, drought relief for the plains. Additional field work opportunities over the eastern Corn Belt, southeastern states too.
Any cool off as we get to the end of May?
A very subtle one here. Back to more normal temperatures here across the northern and western sections of the belt. A little bit below average Pacific Northwest, northern Rockies. The warmth easing, but it's still dominated over the eastern third of the country. Meanwhile, precipitation and good coverage over the Pacific Northwest, central plains into the upper Midwest. Outbreaks of showers and thunderstorms will need it by that time here approaching mid to late May.
Our Farm Progress Roundup is brought to you by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of highly effective and efficient high-speed discs and land rollers. Visit brandt.ca for more. HPAI, highly pathogenic avian influenza, was discovered in America's dairy herd about 2 months ago. And now it's leading to changes in the requirements for moving those dairy animals. Josh Baitke, policy editor with Farm Progress, joins me now. And Josh, fill us in. What requirements are changing for dairy producers on Monday?
Yeah, yesterday, Secretary Vilsack announced a new federal order. Starting Monday, all dairy cattle transported across state lines will first have to have a negative test for avian influenza. There's also going to be some additional reporting requirements in the law to kind of better track the virus, and some additional guidelines coming from the Animal Plant and Health Inspection Service probably by the end of the week. But the key is going to be that new rule for transportation across state lines. All dairy cattle will have to have a negative test for HPAI.
And it sounds as though, Josh, like the industry's preparing for more rules and requirements to come down in future weeks. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, it's kind of an evolving situation. If you go back, avian flu has been an issue in the poultry industry for years. But this year is the first time we've seen it detected in dairy cattle, and that suggests that the virus may be changing. And USDA, FDA want to study that more to understand exactly what's happening. Since March, we've seen it in, I believe, 33 operations now across 8 states have reported positive tests. And significant in this is that some of these cattle are not showing symptoms of the virus. So that's got officials concerned, obviously, that there may be more infected cattle out there than we realize.
Do we know anything about the milk supply in the country so far? Josh, what are our understandings?
Yeah, that was big news this week too. FDA announced that sampling of milk on grocery store shelves showed traces of the avian influenza virus, and the evidence suggests that may go back. That the first positive test in cattle was found in April, but in fact it may have infected cows as far back as last fall. Officials at FDA and USDA are quick to emphasize that through the pasteurization process, milk should still remain safe for human consumption. Pasteurization kills the virus itself, but trace amounts are left in the milk. But it's obviously something worth watching, and I think that's why they issued the rule.
Absolutely.
Yesterday.
And Josh, you'll continue covering this, of course, for Farm Progress. Where can our viewers find your articles?
Yeah, go to farmprogress.com. I write about agriculture policy there, and check us out.
Fantastic. Josh Baitke, policy editor of Farm Progress, thanks so much for joining us this week.
Thanks a lot, Mike. I appreciate it.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. The arrival of a John Deere tractor on a North Carolina tobacco farm really changed things there. The son of the farmer remembers all of these years later. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. Mystic Lubricants are made to make it last. Randy Boykin remembers when his dad got a brand new John Deere, this John Deere 3010. It changed things there on that tobacco farm at Wilson, North Carolina, because the elder Mr. Boykin had been all red since he came back from the Second World War and started farming. After the horses there, he had red tractors. But when the new generation of John Deere tractors came along in 1962, this 3010 was the tractor the elder Mr. Boykin purchased. It brought new comfort to the field in 1962, that new generation with power steering, power brakes, a deluxe seat. Randy said to me, "We thought we had us a Cadillac." He said he's never been able to find the receipt for when this tractor was purchased, but he knows the price for the tractor and a disc was somewhere over $5,000. And it was quite a few years after his dad had passed away that Randy restored the 3010, but he never let it get away. And Randy told me his dad's John Deere reminds him of how they used to work together on that eastern North Carolina farm near the town of Wilson. Mark Stock joins us every weekend to share with us what's selling at Big Iron. Here's his weekly report.
Well, hello, Max. Planters are moving all across the country, and auctions are still being conducted, especially online auctions where all you need is a mobile app to access an online timed sale. May 1st, Big Iron will be selling some equipment all across the country. In Alva, Oklahoma, Dale Nusser will be selling a versatile 435 four-wheel drive tractor. They'll also sell a John Deere 2210 55-foot field cultivator. Scott Shaw is retiring. He's from Hoxie, Kansas. They'll sell a John Deere 8100 two-wheel drive tractor, a Haybuster 2650 bale processor, a John Deere 7630 mechanical front tractor with a loader and grapple fork, and they've got some livestock equipment. A Case IH 9240 combine will sell in Heston, Kansas. 2022 John Deere 5075E mechanical front tractor with a loader will sell in Hamilton, Texas. A 2017 Freightliner Cascadia 125 semi-truck will sell in Iowa. John Deere 4930 self-propelled dry spreader will sell out of Hubbard, Nebraska. Just in time for hay season, a 2023 Massey Ferguson WR265 self-propelled windrower will sell in Hayes Center, Nebraska. An awesome selection of everything ag, truck, and construction selling on Big Iron. Max, we're listing equipment that will sell in July and August. Please contact your Sullivan and Big Iron rep today.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. We love getting to meet that next generation of agriculturalists, and this week we're talking with Kenyon Huntington. He serves as the Central Region Vice President on the National FFA Officer Team. And Kenyon, thanks so much for talking with us this week.
Thanks for having me.
What was it that got you involved with FFA in the first place?
So I had originally grown up on a small sheep and cattle farm in Afton, Iowa. So agriculture has always been a big part of my story and a big influence in the things that I have done. So as I grew up, I showed sheep at my local county fair and state fair. And eventually I made the switch from 4-H to FFA because my sister had done it before me. And once I had joined FFA, my plan was just to continue showing sheep. That's all that I wanted to do. But my advisor, Mr. Cooley, had a few different plans for me, and he got me involved in a soil judging contest. And from there, I was sold. I had some individual achievement on my team, and I was excited to see what FFA had to offer for me.
That's fantastic. You've carried that service through to national leadership. Kenyon, tell me about the Central Region. How many states are in it?
So in the Central Region, we have about 11 states. I like to call it our Midwest states, or our real agriculture states. And they kind of make up the bread basket that most people would think about. So we range all the way up from Minnesota down to Oklahoma. And we have quite a few states that offer a lot of different agricultural commodities where agriculture might look a little bit different, but Central Region is always strong.
That's fantastic. Kenyon, as you look out longer term, do you hope to make a career in agriculture?
Maybe not specifically in agriculture, but still influencing it. I have a passion for policy and government, so I hope to one day be influencing policy on the agricultural side in terms of agricultural law and helping out our farmers and agriculturalists that are continue to feeding the world.
Fantastic. We need good voices in D.C. and then elsewhere. Kenyon Huntington, thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you.
Colby Ag Tech is brought to you by Copperhead Ag Products. Visit copperheadag.com for more information. Warm spring weather brings the chance to be outside, which means Chad Colby gets to play with some more power tools.
Mike, you're definitely right. I love the latest in cordless power tools. And on this week's tech segment, I'm going to feature a top handle chainsaw. Now, this chainsaw essentially cuts faster than a 35cc conventional gas-powered saw and has plenty of power to cut through all kinds of woods, including hardwoods. But when you look at that top handle design, that's what I really like. It's so much more compact, and I tell you, I really like using it. It's a lot more balanced than some of the first editions of chainsaws. Now, in our backyard, we lost an apple tree this week, which is pretty sad in itself. The neighbor lost a big tree, but I want to show you how easy it is for me to clean this up. In my right hand, if you'll notice, I also have an electric 8-inch pruning saw. And I made this time-lapse video so you can see just how quick and easy it is to use these electric saws. And if you haven't been around it, they're fantastic. It's so nice because you've got a lot less maintenance. The only thing you have to maintain, obviously, is that chain. And the technology around these saws is fantastic. And what I mean by that is less than 1 second, that chainsaw is at full power, which is fantastic. Plus, the chainsaw is designed in the brushless motor that when you go to full power, it's going to do everything it can to maintain that high speed, even under the heaviest loads. And apple trees are not an easy cut, but look how easy it did that. Now, if you're unfamiliar with electric saws, I can tell you this, though. The best part about it is they go from maybe hanging on your tool wall in your shop or garage to putting them to use and putting them right back up on the wall in no time. So regardless what color your ecosystem is of cordless tools, I highly encourage you to see the latest in what technology they're offering right now, because like this saw, it's a great upgrade. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thank you, Chad. And folks, don't go away. We're going to look into some pretty classic antique iron when we come back. Here on This Week in Agribusiness, we love looking at farm machinery. We love crawling over the shiny paint on those big new examples, but of course we also like to learn about the classic tractors. And this week, Max has a great tractor story for us.
Well, Mike, of course, each weekend on This Week in Agribusiness, we tell the story of an old farm tractor. And some people may be aware that Orion's dad's farm tractor is still around, but they may not be aware of the story behind it, and I thought we would share this weekend. It was in 1995 when I acquired the old farmall that my folks had on a farm in southwestern Indiana. And our talking about it on the broadcast here made Orion Samuelson's sister think about the tractor their dad had in the Kickapoo Valley in Wisconsin. Well, it was still around, sort of. The old carcass was out in a pasture in Orion's cousin's pasture in Wisconsin. And Orion's sister sent the photograph of that old F-20 made by International Harvester, sent it to me there in our farm department office, and that ignited the fervor to get that tractor somehow out of that field. So the Ipers boys, Larry and his nephew Benjamin, went up there into Wisconsin for me. They loaded up that thing, and as you could see from the photographs, it was not in very good condition. It was in terrible shape, as a matter of fact. We took it to Illinois and then auctioned off that carcass to benefit the Ag in the Classroom program at one of my tractor rides. It brought down near $7,000, as I recall. And then it was restored, impeccably restored, magnificently, remarkably restored by the International Harvester Collectors Club, Chapter 10 in Central Illinois. The Harms boys oversaw that massive project, and the result was tremendous. Orion and his family accepted that tractor at one of our tractor rides, and that remains in the hands of the International Harvester Collectors Club, Chapter 10. You may see it displayed, as a matter of fact, at one of the events, the I&I show, or maybe the Half Century of Progress. You've seen it there. But the restoration caught the attention of the late Paul Harvey, radio commentator heard around the world, and he called attention to the fact that there is something magical about having that old tractor, the one that Dad had, as Paul shared.
The voice of the American farmer, Orion Samuelson, grew up on a farm. He was 5 years young the day the shiny new red Farmall F20 tractor was unloaded in the barnyard. He was 8 before his legs were long enough and strong enough to operate the clutch. But that day, he became his father's partner, plowing and disking, planting, hay cutting, oats harvesting. Years later, when the farm was sold, the old tractor went with everything else. But 10 years ago, the remains were discovered, rusting away in a pasture. Farm broadcaster Max Armstrong had always encouraged Orion to join in his hobby of tractor restoration. And what do you know? That Farmall F20, which was bought new for $720 in 1939, was sold used when the farm was sold in 1965 for $750. And now the rusty remains have been sold to a collector of antique tractors for $6,700. And restored, it will likely bring 4 times that. And when the old engine comes back to life, just the sound to a homesick farm boy, just the sound will be beyond any price.
Now you've heard, as Paul would have said back in the day, the rest of the story.
Thank you, Max. I had never heard that Paul Harvey piece. I really appreciate you sharing that with us, and I'm glad to see Orion's tractor will live on and continue to inspire others. That's it for this week, folks. We'll see you next time right here for This Week in Agribusiness.
This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.